Hello, in this lecture we look at the important subject of unemployment, specifically zeroing down on how to measure unemployment. Unemployment is measured generally by the unemployment rate, which is the number of people who are unemployed as a percentage of the labor force. To illustrate the controversy around measurement of unemployment in a highly informalized economy, let's look at the case of Zimbabwe. The Zimbabwe National Statistical Agency, ZimStat for short, conducts quarterly labor force surveys where they measure different aspects of unemployment or employment. And in this discussion, we make use of the 2022 quarter one survey results. In this survey, persons in unemployment were defined as persons who during the reference period were without paid work, were seeking for work, and were available to start working, and that figure was calculated at 19% in Q1 of 2022. Interesting to note at this point that other official reports in Zimbabwe have quoted figures as low as 5% in 2021. There is what they call the expanded national unemployment rate for persons 15 years and above, which was calculated at 47% in the same report. Here, expanded unemployment rate is basically the combined rate of unemployment and potential labor force, where potential labor force consists of working age persons who during the reference period were without paid work and either were seeking for work but were not available to start work, or were available to start work but were not seeking for work. 28% of the employed population was in the informal sector, while 45% were in the informal sector. 88% of the employed population were informally employed. Here, informal employment is determined by the characteristics of the job a person holds. So informal employment is defined to include the following jobs, like on-account workers and employers employed in their own informal sector enterprises. It also covers unpaid contribution from family workers, irrespective of whether they work in the formal or informal sector enterprises. It covers members of informal producers cooperatives and also paid employees who are not entitled to any of the following statutory contributions, being pension contributions funded by the employer, paid annual leave, paid sick leave, and written contracts with employer. Just to see the confusion and the discord coming with this, the Zimbabwe Federation of Trade Unions, which is a trade union for organized labor aligned to the ruling party, the Secretary General Kenya's Shamyarira was criticizing the statistics, saying they are way out of touch with the reality on the ground, to use his words. He went on to say the definition of formal employment must relate to stable incomes. He further states, and I quote, "To us as organized labor, the actual figure of organized employment is hovering between 70% to 80% and not the established 20%, close quote. The same survey revealed that 77% of the employed persons earned incomes of RTGS 20,000 for the month of January 2022. Just to put in perspective, because of the current crisis in Zimbabwe, this figure translates at the time using the official rate to an income of $170. When you use the parallel market rate, which is the working and pretty much the real rate, that number comes down to $80 per month. These earnings, translating to less than $3 per day, are very low, and we are not told in the same report what the earnings for the remainder of the 23% were, but chances are the majority of the remaining 23% still earned incomes way below the poverty datum line. So I guess this is where the union is coming from to say we cannot relate with that number because it's not meeting the criteria of stable and reasonable incomes. So there are different ways National Statistics Agency measure unemployment, and that makes international comparison of unemployment data quite difficult. When we say unemployment is 5% in Zimbabwe, that may mean completely different thing with someone who is speaking from the West. For instance, the US Bureau of Labor calculates 6 alternative measures of unemployment from U1 to U6 as follows. U1 is defined as the percentage of labor force unemployed 15 weeks or longer. U2 takes the percentage of labor force who lost jobs or completed temporary work. U3, which is more or less in keeping with the ILO definition of unemployment, is defined where people are without jobs and they have actively looked for work within the past 4 weeks. This has become the standard ILO definition. U4 then takes U3 and add discouraged workers, or those who have stopped looking for work because current economic conditions make them believe that no work is available for them. And that resonates well with the situation in Zimbabwe at the moment. U5 will go on to take U4 and add the marginally attached workers or loosely attached workers, or those who would like and are able to work but have not looked for work recently. Again, that resonates quite well with the situation on the ground in Zimbabwe, largely because of the economic meltdown. U6, the last measure of the Bureau, takes U5 and add to that part-time workers who want to work full-time but cannot for economic reasons, which is underemployment. Again, sounds familiar. So when one looks at U3 and applies that to Zimbabwe, it gives a completely different picture. When you then accommodate the other dimensions, taking us to U4, U5, U6, which dimensions resonate well with economies, emerging economies that are going through economic crisis, you then begin to see how and why unemployment measurements tend then to vary broadly. Hence, given the above, one cannot now standardize unemployment across jurisdictions, but need to be very careful and come down to how the National Statistical Agency of the jurisdiction in question goes on to measure their unemployment. So you can see why there is controversy when it comes to what the true level of unemployment is. In the case of Zimbabwe, the figure ranges from anything between 5% and 90%, depending on the source.